don't see it just as a cosmetic job that you're doing. You're not just hiring people who look different and sound different. You're hiring people that you are committing to train and grow. I think that that last piece gets lost a lot, because a lot of times managers get a lot of points, a lot of brownie points for hiring people of color and expanding the diversity in their teams. But I've seen situations where people are brought on and there's kind of a lot of fanfare, like, wow, increased diversity, yay. And then those people who are hired to reflect greater diversity in the newsroom aren't set up to succeed. And that really bothers me, because the easy part is hiring them. The much harder part is turning them into excellent journalists, or giving them opportunities to show the world that they are excellent journalists. And my advice to managers would be, it's all one enterprise. You don't just hire, you hire to retain and grow, to mentor and allow to shine these people that you are bringing on to the team. It's not just who you pluck to come in, it's who you do a good enough job with so that they agree to stay.
You don't want to necessarily become like the gay reporter or the Filipino reporter in your case in the newsroom. You know, you don't want to kind of have that added responsibility of being the arbiter of what's appropriate or what's not appropriate, or what is most true versus less true, or how do we not play into a stereotype, or you know, all issues like that. So while I kind of said you don't want to do that, in many ways I think the reality is that we are in a position to do that and to help people and to educate and inform. So you may not want to do it, or I may not want to do it, because it is an added responsibility. It is an added burden. Yet at the same time, especially in our role as journalists, our job is to educate and inform. And sometimes that starts with the people sitting to the right or to the left of us in our own newsrooms.
I think the number one thing is just keeping in mind that just because somebody is Latino or Black or gay or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that they should or shouldn't cover a story. I think it's really up to the individual reporter, what they feel comfortable with, and just having that sort of discussion. And I would say that too, it's probably the most comfortable when it comes from the reporter themselves, and whether they want to do a story for a certain reason or don't want to do a story for a certain reason. Like, I think it's a very interesting subject because, for example, like, there's politics reporters, right? And, you know, most politics reporters, because they're regular people, probably have a political opinion or think, are on one side or the other, but you expect them to be professional enough to attack the story in a professional way and in a sort of unbiased sort of way, because that's what we're called to do as journalists. It's not that we don't have opinions. It's just that we're professional enough to kind of keep those at bay and do our jobs and do them fairly. So when it comes to the point of covering something that has to do with someone's identity, I think that just like we expect a politics reporter to be a professional and be fair about whatever subject they're covering, there's no reason. Like, it's the same thing with identity. Like, just because someone has a certain identity doesn't mean that they can't cover something fairly. And again, it's also kind of up to them too, like what to cover or not cover, and feeling comfortable or not comfortable for whatever reason, just like any other story. So I think sometimes that's looked at differently, but it shouldn't be. And ultimately, those sort of discussions are like important. But I think at the end of the day, we're journalists, and we're called to cover things fairly, and so it doesn't matter what kind of topic it is. Like, that's what we're gonna do, and so that's the way it should be looked at. in my opinion. And so, so I think just kind of having that sort of mindset is a good mindset to have.
So I would say first and foremost, in order to understand diversity, in order to understand your newsroom, you need to have some type of grounding in oppression or in history of Black liberation. You know what I mean? So I think that that's like first and foremost. It's like reading outside of work. Who are you hanging out with? What are you reading? What are you intaking? Are you only around Black people or brown people or indigenous people when you're in your newsroom? Are you outside of that vicinity as well? Also, don't be afraid to have honest and candid conversations with the staff. You know what I mean? Like, do surveys in your newsroom. You know, even if people are afraid to kind of say it up front in a meeting, you know, gauge what everybody's thinking. Also invest in like mental health care. Like journalists or social workers. I don't like we are in proximity to social workers. I don't think that people realize that. And especially if you want representation in your newsroom, you have to realize that they come from very traumatized backgrounds too. And are you giving them the help that they need within those institutions? What else, girl? Girl, I got so many. Oh, also, you know, I know this is easier said than done, but think about leadership from a non-hierarchical standpoint. And what does that look like? And what does a communal approach in a newsroom look like? And what does that improve when we do take that approach as well? Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And just like have imagination. Like be willing to do different things, be willing to invest in different talents, even if you cannot see beyond. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you bring a certain journalist in your newsroom, you are leaning on their expertise. And so why limit and mitigate that? You know what I mean? So I just think about that a lot.